So we'll just give a couple of minutes for those who want to join us today.
Good morning, Lewis.
Good morning. We'll give one more minute, just get everyone a little more situated. I hope everyone's able to look at the WhatsApp and been able to um, look at the instructions, what needed to be done today. If you wanted to follow along. Okay, it is now 5 minutes after, so we'll just start on our side today. Okay, so welcome to week 3. We talked about in the beginning sort of LLM models, how to use deep learning, how to fine tune them. Second week, we talked more about different types of fine tuning to be more quantized and to get it working, right? So again, the point we're looking now is more intermediate courses rather than basic prompting and chatbots. We want to take a little bit more a step ahead. We know that chatbots are now easy to make. We can have different things. So how do we make them more effective? So again, LLMs are frozen. And that's something, again, I want to iterate for those who have taken Generative 101, and that's something I always iterate. LLMs are frozen. So what does that mean? When they get trained, as you saw before, we're training the model on that PDF on the CSV. It doesn't mean that that CSV is live. The model is trained only once. Sometimes it takes weeks, even months to train a model, only on that one CSV point of data and then it's done. So that becomes a pre-trained model. This is why you go on LLMs, you ask them, what is your cutoff knowledge date? You can ask that to ChatGPT, you can ask that to any other model. What is your cutoff knowledge date? And that will tell you the last time they consumed or and trained themselves on something like that, right? So this is something that you need to think about when you see these LLMs. So some of them, like some people have asked, even general ones, like, well, I can ask ChatGPT today what's the date it's going to tell me. And it's because it's connected to something called tools. If you have an LLM and you need to have it connected to external data, and you need it to be live to other things, you need to connect it. You need to have an architecture that feeds the LLM information, very similar like a RAG, where you want to inject context into an LLM. You want to have these LLMs give tools. So if you hear the words agentic AI or agents, this is what an LLM does. You create a framework in which an LLM can make decisions and say, hey, if you see a question, you have an option of choosing tools to decide which ones you want to use and which ones you don't want to use, right? These tools are what connects and gives external information to the chatbot or to your LLM that you're using. So you can give a tool to say, hey, I want you to give me the date, in which you created a Python function that collects the date. You say, hey, if I want to know what today's date is, use this Python function. So it's going to go and use that. It's going to use that function and says, okay, I need to gather today's date. The user has given me this type of information, and boom, puts it in and runs the function and then gives you back the information. So when you build agentic AI, it's these LLMs based off different frameworks like LangChain, semantic kernel. There's different ones out there in which uses agentic frameworks in which it tells the model, hey, you have a list of tools available for you to use. Use this to grab external internal information. So we'll talk about what kind of tools there are, and this is what we did in Gen 101. Remember, we looked at we grabbed the Wikipedia newsletter, or we used today's Python date, and we told the agent to choose which tool to use. So how can we make that effort better? How can we make something that sort of has better decisions? This is where MCP comes in. So let's go a little bit more into what is MCP, why is it so important today, and why is it sort of the latest and greatest technology that if you were to ask anyone right now who's creating agentic frameworks or making agents, they say that MCP is sort of that must-have, and let's figure out why. So MCP was actually created by Anthropic in November of 2024. It was an open protocol to see how can they do better toolings to connect to their APIs. So they wanted a way to say, hey, it's cool that my model can connect to an API, but there's got to be something better than that. There's got to be more ways that we can say, okay, let's connect to an API, to an LLM, but there's got to be some sort of way we can put more security. There's got to be a way that we can understand the context being pulled from the API before we give it to an LLM. And there's got to be different ways that, an example, if you have a database, you have different things you need to read, than just simply just having predefined things coming at them at the same time. So this is where MCP was sort of born. Enables LLMs to access files, repositories, and databases and APIs. It's sort of like a USB-C of AI applications, right? So it's like a universal connector. Think of your laptop in order for it to connect to your phone, in order to connect to different things, it needs a USB-C cable to order to do that. And that's what MCPs are. They're that USB-C cable that connects to different applications, to different APIs, rather than directly querying an API in that type of sense. And usually, when you're doing software development, and you say, okay, I need to connect, let's say, SAP to my other system, you need to sort of say, okay, well, what's the integration like? We have to build integrators. We need to build custom connectors. We need to do this. We need to do that, right? But MCP sort of cuts through all of that and says, no, no, no. What does your API look like for your SAP system? What are the tool functions to call it? And then I'll call an LLM to be able to just query directly the schema it needs. So again, this point of the MCP removes that custom integration you would have to connect one place with another with having that USB connector connect with it. So Anthropic didn't know this, but when it first created this, hey, we're doing MCP servers, they didn't know it was going to blow up. And today, now, because now we're going to the agentic framework, MCP is sort of top standards when it comes to building agentic frameworks. It grabbed a lot of traction. Things have been changing really fast. And for those who work directly with API connections and those who are work directly with Postman and things like that, you can see that how quickly things will be changing once it gets even more traction as it goes on. So it's been a lot of things happening with MCP servers. Let me change this page. So what did the MCP do? Just going in, we're going to go back and talk about it. Is that MCP lets agents see your APIs, right? So if you have an API exposed to your system, MCP gives the opportunity of an agent, hey, this is the schema of this software, this is the schema of this database, this is the schema of this, and this is what you can look at and query. So again, a lot of people who are into API management, their goal is to maximize their API usage as much as you want because you're developing something, you're hosting something and serving it. And the point of you hosting and serving something for an API is for it to be used. And if you're not getting much usage, then you're paying a lot of money for nothing. So this is why the opportunity comes up that agents who are connected to these APIs can dramatically increase this API usage. So again, I think the third point comes to when you publish your MCP servers, you can have one server but many clients in the sense that you can create this MCP server for your one software, but you can have many different LLMs and many different applications use that same MCP server. So you don't have to recreate that same MCP server 30 times or 40 times. You could make it sort of that gateway if you have different tools that need access to this. So again, going back to the bottom, agents, IDEs, and LLMs, host and clients connect, everything connects to the MCP server. So again, just talking about how it's really the USB cable of the next APIs. So how does this look like? So on this side, we have different clients. So if you look at the image, we see cursor, CLI, etc. You have a client that's going to request information, and today we're going to be using Claude to do this, to connect to a client. They'll connect to our MCP. You need to have this MPC served on a server for it to be worked. So it's either GitHub MCP, DB MCP. We'll talk about what those different ones are. And how it communicates is through JSON RPC. So JSON RPC is a protocol that talks about how it reads data formed as JSON formats. And the bottom is how it's sort of transported in and out. So the most important part is you create MCPs because you want stateful connections. And for those who are new to the word states, states is when you want to keep memory of what's happening and you want to keep things like you want to keep your session statuses of what's happening. So for an example, if you have a Google Maps or a Google Weather API and you say, what's today's weather? You can get that information, and then your MCP server can store that in history. So then you can ask, what's today's weather and compare it to yesterday's. So LM, instead of making two MCP calls and saying, okay, I'll need to do one for today and try to do another one for yesterday, can look at the context state and say, actually, he asked the same question the day before. I can just give back him the message that was yesterday and give the LLM also that message of today. And the LLM will take those and then combine them together and give a response to the user. So now we're giving it more of a brain of how to use these APIs because typical straight APIs, straight input, straight output. But now with MCPs, you could create these state servers that are more intelligent, understand the context, and be able to look at the whole schema from there. Okay, someone asked, the word tool is very broadly used many times in a agentic world. What type of other things outside of MCP servers that serve as tools? So it's gonna maybe you missed when I was talking at the beginning. When we did Genai 101, when we used Python functions that even call the date. A date functioning tool is called a tool as well because you're using a Python. You're telling your LLM model to use this Python function to get today's date because LLMs don't know today's date. They only know the date where they're trained on. If you need to then read Wikipedia, you have to create a tool to read a Wikipedia. If you want to connect to an API, you have to create a tool for an LLM use to use the API. You just simply can't just say, "Hey LLM, here's this API. Use it to call it." The model will say, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't access external servers." So you need to have a framework in which tools and how you're going to call these tools are being built in for it to be used. So Nagish asks, how does MCP servers have context and what does it need to be returned and how does it use RAG internally? So we'll get into how what's inside MCP servers as well, but understand that MCP servers run on states, right? Again, if you're not familiar with the word state, state is recorded sessions, right? So it has context turns built into the MCP as well. So we'll show you how sort of MCP servers are stored. MCP servers store logs. MCP servers stores interactions. MCP servers serve authentication. It's simply not just an API call. It's literally a server that you're working with, and that records everything from there. So again, this is where you have the session states, you have all that information going, right? So just remember that. And no, it doesn't use like a RAG. MCP servers directly query the data. It doesn't use embeddings. It doesn't use anything like that. It uses the tools that you created to extract information from the area you need. So that's a good question. Someone asked, tools can be present in MCP client as well. So tools can be, so again, your MCP client is the tool. So you wouldn't create a tool in a tool in itself. For example, you say, I need to talk to my Google Sheets. So you have an API that connects to Google Sheets. So you have to create an MCP server that can read all the different APIs, which we'll go through next of understanding the tools that are inside that could be called inside your Google Sheets API. So when your LLM reads your MCP server, it's reading all the different tools that can be called inside your MCP server. It's not that MCP server will call another tool to do it. You would need an orchestrator LLM to do that. So if you want to call one MCP and then call another one with a different type of tool, you have to orchestrate that flow separately. An MCP server will not jump to another server to get your information. It's only dedicated to one. Stateful versus stateless isn't a choice. So that's a very good question. So again, this goes back to session state recording, but you wouldn't want on stateless in MCP servers. That means there's really if you go a stateless way in MCP server, then you basically just do a normal API call. The whole point of using the advantage of using MCP server is having that state function of being able to store history in a conversational. So if you want to go stateless, then your MCP server won't host or store information. It won't store all the extra benefits that come with it. So really, if you go stateless in MCP, the only way you can get really benefits from it is possibly saving tokens from not storing history. So that could be another way from there.
Actually, Louis, if I can ask a question, if you don't mind. So the question is more around, like, say, for example, if you're exposing your database as an MCP server, right? Like we're giving the schema and all of that stuff, right? No two queries are identical, correct? Depending on what you're asking, correct? From that perspective, it's not conversational, but for people who are, like not have enough knowledge of your schema, but be able to query based on, hey, give me like reporting for this kind of a dimension and all of that stuff, right? What is the need for it to be stateful at that time?
Yeah, so so example from this, let's say your data, you need to collect something from your database, in which we're going to get there so you can understand how it
Sure.
calls.
Cool.
But let's say you have different queries set up to be called, right? So remember, an MCP server won't make up a query. If you say, okay, give me the latest date from, I need the latest report from this area, this area, this area. An MCP server won't make a new query for you. What the LLM does is reads what functions and tools can be called, and you can create a tool that says select reporting date, this, and this. So then the LLM can be able to go and read your schema and pull that information out. But it's your LLM that's going in and modifying that tool call in order to do its tool call itself. So it's not your MCP server that gets modified. It's your LLM modifying the tools that's using in order to be called. So again, that goes back to your response of why do you like if something like someone asks a question versus another one, why that difference is when you still receive a response back, that response still needs to go through the MCP in order to get back to your LLM. So when you're going back and forth, it has to create a session state of saying the response being sent out, the response coming back in, history logged, and then going back to your LLM. So you sort of still need that in order for you to understand what's happening, especially more of an authentic, like more of an authentication and privacy, which we'll talk about next. But that whole flow is the whole point of having MCP because you could create a text to query SQL function that says, I just want an agent to go in, pull information, and that's it. But then you miss out on memory, you miss out on context, you miss out on all the things that MCP could enrich your LLM with. Okay, and let's answer just two more questions because there's a lot more questions coming. Do we need to pay by tokens for MCP or can we defer it later? Or maybe on premise or no cost. So MCP servers will eat tokens because there's inference, right? You send an inference to an LM. LM needs to understand and read what tools are available. Once it reads tools from an MCP server, there will be tokens coming in and will be eaten. And there is ways for it to then be saved. So the only way you could really save cost and money on MCP servers is if you have it um, on a serverless way. But again, that's very experimental right now. It's still on the works. But right now, your MCP server will send tokens or will send function calls to your API constantly to ensure that it's still active and still able to make those calls. So that right now, MCP servers do have cost. But if you switch it over to a serverless server, you can then reduce the cost and only turn it on when needed. But again, that requires some finessing of the back. So you said LLMs can make up a query, not necessarily MCP server. So the LLM can only make up a query if it knows what to query, right? So it won't know, example, let's say you have a database and you have 15 tables in it. Your LLM won't know all the different strings, all the different functions, all the different context inside your database. And this is why it needs an MCP server to sort of feed it and tell it, okay, this is how you would call this table and this information. So you need an MCP server in order to feed the LLM the right information in order to query and call the right tools in your MCP server. So again, someone asks, how does LM know all the MCP servers and tools available? This is where you have to have a good framework. LangChain, LangGraph, these agentic frameworks are how you build these tooling out to your LLM. So you can say, hey LM, you have actions to you have ability to two different tools. One is your MCP server, another is a Python function. Please only use MCP servers to extract information from databases. Please only use Python function to extract today's date. You then define and build these out using nodes, saying use this node if you need to go down this road, and use this node if you go down that road. So again, you LLMs won't know, and will you need to sort of create that framework for these MCP servers to work. So again, how do these, again, going deeper into the MCP servers, they use that JSON protocol to communicate between the clients and servers. Inside these MCPs, they have something called tool/list, which will list out all the tools that are available inside these MCP servers. So today we'll be going through one example of looking at one API in which we'll have all the list of tools, and then the model has to decide from all the list of tools which one is the best one to use for the response. So again, there are stateful connections. So unlike I said before, unlike traditional REST APIs, MCP maintains state across request, enabling context-aware interactions. So why is this important? Again, you want to use the benefits of having stateful MCPs because you want to have it to be contextually aware what's happening, what's asking, um, and you need to understand, and it sort of gives an extra boost to an LLM because it's saying, okay, let's say you need to look at two different MCP servers in order to extract information. My job is to look at these two different Google Sheets, or one in Google Sheets and one is in your database, extract information from both, and then combine them and give an LLM give an answer. So then you would have the LLM interact with one, and you have another one interact with another. And then having it understand that what you're trying to do, um, all that information gets stored into, like I said before, as contextual awareness. So next time you're able to respond, it's able to give, hey, you guys, you look this up as well. Here's your tool, and here's extra information that you should be able to know. Okay, in clients and servers, negotiate capabilities during connection or initializations. And again, the whole point of this is to also ensure that everything that you're interacting with has privacy and authentication. So before you initialize, before you start, you have these authentications happening to ensure that everything's sort of in a client in a private way. Yeah, so here I had a question, what's a communication protocol? So again, that JSON RPC 2.0 is currently the communication protocol that is being used in MCP servers today. Just yesterday, I believe, JSON RPC 3.0 came out. But again, just as everything new comes, there's also experimental things happening. So again, I say use 2.0 for now, and most MCP servers are configured to use 2.0. But if there's anything more than that, again, it also changes just like how typical things happen. The way you connect an MCP server, the way you call tools, the way you call everything, as soon as a new format comes out, it also deactivates a lot of old technicalities of how you used to call things. Well, actually, we'll go through one today because I set up a demo of this 3, 4 months ago. And it's today I go back to the same thing because 2.0 came out. The way I used it before is no longer valid. I have to then authenticate another way for it to work. So as these things come out, you always have to be very careful of which protocol you're using. If it doesn't have backwards compatibility, it could crash and break how MCP servers connect. So why would you use MCP versus a traditional API, right? So again, going back to if I have a direct API, well, can I just directly connect to it, and why do I really need to use an MCP? Like, what's that? Um, what's the point of it? So in traditional API, like I said before, it's general and software to software. Your information is static and requires documentation. There's varied formats and protocols, and it can break if something changes just a little bit. So let's say you have an API call to your Google Sheets. You built a tool that just simply queries your API call of your Google Sheets and bring it back. So it works perfectly fine. You go in there, you put the API, you tell the LM to call the API when you need this information, and it's able to get that information. But the next day, guess what? It breaks. You're like, why? What's happening? Why isn't it calling the same sheets? You go back and you understand that Google Sheets updated its API formats, no longer uses this, no longer uses that. You added an extra column because you added the extra column to your API. Your API is no longer valid. It's not having the same responses. So anything that comes with a little bit of changes, like I said before, the adaptability of having these traditional APIs break. So this is where MCP comes in. MCPs are made only for LLMs because again, the whole point of it is to enrich LLMs with more information. They use these tools, but they're dynamic. Let's say you have a function to run a query, and you need a date changed, they can look at it, look at that tool, and update certain fields that they want in order to do discovery and understand what information is. And the difference between this is saying, hey, let's say you need to collect information about yesterday's 5 p.m. thing. So let's say you have a tool at MCP that goes in and looks at your Google Sheets of what you wrote in 5 p.m. yesterday. So it goes in, looks at it, but one field's added extra, so it breaks. You're like, oh. And then the LM will see, MCP will say, look, you try to respond back to this, but this is broken. LM will say, okay, let's look at the schema and say, oh, I realize that this field is broken. Let's exclude it in our call and run again. So the LM is able to look, adapt, and run again, adapting with the MCP, then to grab your data and bring it back in. So that's a big difference between using APIs and LLMs is that they sort of work together to help ensure that it's flexible, it adapts to new capabilities. If there's something new happening, the LLM is able to troubleshoot through it and get the response that it needs, and is able to then give more functionality and have the LLM be able to be a little bit more discovery when you do these things as well, right? So only thing you need to understand though, because you're using MCP and the model can discover and wants to try new things, it will consume more tokens. So it will be more on the costly side to do this. And one thing that you need to note too is that sometimes giving too much options to an LLM is also very bad. You could have 100 tools and tell the LM to pinpoint which one it needs to decide. The LM will need to then read through 100 tool functions you have in your API call and decide which one's the best one. If you don't have proper descriptions, you don't have proper tool calling, it will guess itself which one to use and it'll bring you back wrong information. So again, when you do these MCPs and you're pulling in the different tooling and you make sure you want to make it work, you need something that's sort of direct and you need something that sort of picks four or five out and go from there. You need to have and you need to be able to then guide the LM to say, okay, these are the top 10 calls. I want you to figure it out, and here's how you would use them, right? And you would do that through your prompt engineering, so it can understand more of all your tools and what's inside your MCP servers. Okay, Nagish had a good question. Does LM call MCP using RPC 2.0 and have a contract to make sure it's able to communicate? Or does client only communicate with MCP? So going back to the previous slide, you can see here that the client reads and writes through the JSON RPC 2.0. So it uses this as the main communication methods to talk to your MCP server. So it's not only client, it's also the server, and it's also how all the information gets thrown out. So this is really the protocol that everyone will use in order to get the right responses coming through.
So there is no communication between the LLM as well as the MCP, like LLM calling the MCP. Does that happen at all? Because I don't see that here.
So that's the client. So right here we have the cursor CLL. Today we'll be using Claude. That is the LLM. Your client is your LLM server communicating with the JSON RPC messages.
But cursor is not, is cursor LLM? It's just a client, isn't it? Where user basically connects to or CLI.
So how this would work is that you have to create an MCP server, um, and then you would have cursor connect to the MCP server, but it would still then require a function calling through an LLM through the cursor to call and use that MCP server that you just created. So we'll go through, yeah, so example, wait to the demo and you'll probably understand a little bit more of how that gets put in. Okay. So let's go through a couple examples of what people have said about MCPs. The principal cloud advocate of Microsoft said an MCP server is an API. It exposes functionality that another program can use. An MCP server must expose the API in a very strict way, outpowering the tool definitions to follow the MPC schemas. That allows MCP clients to use that tool API from any MCP server since the interface is predictable. So what she's trying to say is talks about most people like, well, MCP is just an API call. Yes, it calls the API, but there's a lot more to that. She's saying that because an MCP server not only has APIs, it also has the schema of your tool, of your API calls. Um, so example, if you have Google Sheets and you can only call certain functions, and rather than just calling 2 or 3 functions through APIs, you can have a schema of saying, when you call an API, here's all the different tables and formats that you're able to use. So because MCP servers sort of give out, hey, here's the layout of your whole data set, and here's the tool calls you can use pretty much any interface to communicate with that MCP server because they do it in a very clear and a standout way. So how do LLMs use MCP? So LLMs send a request to the MCP server to discover what available tools and what are the capabilities. And they do this through the protocol. So it can be done through example, for the LLM to be run, right? You need an LLM to be run in a Python notebook, or you need to be an LLM run on a function. You need to be able to then connect to an MCP server. So you can have Cursor enable an MCP server inside Cursor. You can have your Cloud Code we're looking right now to enable MCPs. You can include all the different servers inside and have the LLM be able to interact with them. So LLM sends a request to the MCP servers through that JSON protocol that we talked about, and they return it back from the MCP. What is the schema and what are the tools available? So once it passes and receives that first interaction, then the LLM chooses based off the user's request and the tool descriptions, what is the most appropriate tool to call in the MCP server.
So is MCP client an orchestrator for connecting the MCP servers and LLM?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Is MCP server orchestrating the things connecting to the MCP servers and LLM?
No, so the MCP server is the orchestrator. Like there's nothing else. So think of the MCP server as the USB cable, right? And the USB cable is connected to your database to any other functions you have. So when you want your LLM to talk to your database, you want the LLM to talk to Google Sheets, you want to talk to something else, you need to first send the information to the cable, right? Or else you want to talk to your data.
So Claude and Cursor, all these are called MCP client, right? If I believe.
Yes. Well, the function here they call the clients, yeah, MCP clients, but they'll just be your typical clients.
So for a Claude, you can connect to multiple MCP servers, right? You configure multiple MCP servers. And LLM is also assigned from the client, right? So when you are typing in something in the Claude or Client or anything, it's basically connecting to your client and it's using the MCP servers and talking to LLM and coming back, right? So
Right. Yes. So I think Kieran had the same question as well. So that's correct. So the client is also the LLM that you're using to send out the messages.
so who is saving the context? So is that the Claude client is saving the context of every time, right? When you're asking the conversation to like, oh, check in this file into the Git or write this content into the wiki, and all this context, where does it store?
It's in your context history of your LLM. So everything that it gets, everything's added as a context history, right? So remember, if you think of a chatbot, you ask, hey, how's it going? It responds back to you. And the chatbot on your next turn doesn't only respond to what your question, it grabs your chat history, all of it, then sends it back to the LLM and add it to your response, right? So when you have a chat with LLMs, it's a snowball token of how much data, how much chat you're consuming. So same thing with MCP client, you ask a question, information that's being received gets snowballed into the conversation.
Whenever you contact LLM, you're sending the complete context every time.
Yes, and anytime you have a chat window, it sends the whole context to your LLM to understand what's happening in a conversation history.
Louis, is when you refer to an agent is also same as MCP client because it has the LLM.
So an agent is anything that that can call a tool. So an LLM can call a tool, and then it becomes agentic AI. So this is why the term is very loose. The term is very used very broadly. You could call anything agentic in the sense like even a RAG is agentic because you're giving a tool to your LLM to input context window. So it shouldn't only be called agentic, shouldn't be just called RAG. It could be agentic as well because you're giving it something to use, right? So anything you see is agentic is tool calling. There's people who go deep into theory of agents, and they're saying there's two different types of agentic. There's tool calling agents, and there's someone to say true agentic. And true agentic for many theorists is that you can have an LLM make decisions on their own without any supervision, anything at all, and they make and you get the final results out, right? So again, those are the true agentic ones are the ones that are very to be wary of because you don't know how LLMs right now aren't 100% um viable right now. So right now I see anything that calls a tool is agentic.
Hey, Luis, one quick question actually. So in the previous slide, you said that like the Microsoft advocate, she says that API as to tools as API. But then what we are talking in this slide, like you said that it's a little more than that, correct? So do we disagree with it or industry disagrees with it? What she says?
No, so again, when this in this quote, she talks about MCP is really because again, it goes back to most people think that MCP servers are just APIs. So she's just trying to confirm that it's not just, but it is the MCP server is part of the API structure, but it's very different in the sense that instead of doing direct calls, you can have again schemas integrated in your MCP servers. You can have functionalities, descriptions built into your MCP servers that makes things very predictable rather than just simply just doing a direct API call.
Do you have room for another question, Luis? I can ask. Otherwise, I'll wait till Wednesday.
Yeah, no, you can go ahead right now.
So, like the way we are using the MC, I'll just give you a very quick example, maybe 30 seconds, right? The way we use it is, like we have the rules defined, okay, at the client level, correct, which will have every information about, like the complete schema, for example. Hey, these are relationships and all of that stuff. Our MCP server pretty much is an dumbed down version of executor, correct? Hey, like you decide, like based on the question that is being asked, understanding the schema, and we'll have very directed what do you call the relationships and everything defined in the schema in the form of rules, correct? And then the way we have done is MCP server is a dumbed down version, which is an entry point into the system, like which is the backend database, authentication, authorization, and such. Maybe it is a different implementation of it, you know.
Yeah, so remember, MCP servers are built for LLM. So you're talking about the executor, which has pretty defined strict rules. This is what this needs. This is what needs to be done. This needs to be
Right,
this.
right. Yeah.
So what MCP server does is, hey, here's all the tools the user defined. Here's the schemas the user defined. I'm going to give these definitions and tools to an LLM for it to decide which one is the best to answer the user's question. So you're giving the LLM freedom of choice between all the tool sets to use.
Correct.
So instead of doing one-to-one mapping, relationship mapping that you would have an executor or things like that, you're giving the freedom to an LLM to be able to look at the MCP server and based off the user's request, select the most appropriate tool. So you're giving that more freedom. You're removing that strict of saying, let's say you have a one-to-one relationship, but let's say a user's question isn't directly defined or isn't properly worded properly, that your one-to-one relationship might break on a typical one-to-one server. But LLM is able to understand the nuances, understand the context, and say, no, actually, the user's trying to look for this. So let's go and use this tool instead. Um, so
Actually,
it's
slightly different, Louis. Actually, sorry to extend the conversation. Like, say, example, right? You have in a large enterprise scale, enterprises, right? You will have hundreds of domains, correct? The way it is done, at least in our company, I won't say right, wrong, or whatever it is. We have an MCP server for every domain, for example, correct? It knows what it provides. And then obviously it is exposed as a part of the MCP context to the LLM to decide. Like, for example, if you're doing a build system, it'll go and use the build tools and not an provisioning system or an, like something else, or customer system or something like that, correct? It knows exactly, hey, these are build steps. So I need to use the tools that are meant for build and not for something else, something like that, So we have the tool MCP servers defined for each domain. And then it is exposed in the context so that LLM, if you are allowing it a free hand to go choose a set of tools, and we define in the cursor rules, essentially saying that, hey, for build, there are 10 steps. And then these are the MCP tools available and a little more context so that it goes and picks the right tools.
Yeah, exactly it. So again, you need to create MCP servers based off each domain that you have.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that in the next slide. Is that you need to have these ones because they're strict. They're very strict. You can't say, okay, I'm going to have one MCP server that has source A and source B data and then have it pull information. It will mess up. Your LLM will be messing up. It won't know the proper integration. So just like how you were explaining before, you need to have an MCP server built out for each local source or domain of data that you need in order for it to work. So you could have hundreds of MCP servers, and then you have to have defined in your architecture which tooling to use and why to use it. So you need to use data source A in your context, in your system, in your prompt engineering, only if you need this from domain A. You only use information from domain B if someone asks information from domain B, right? So it's a mix of data engineering. It's also a mix of your agentic framework, ensuring that it's able to choose the most proper tool set that you need to use. So that's sort of a little bit more of how that's sort of built out. So again, the point of this slide is if you have multiple data sources, do not combine them and say, I want to put them under one MCP server. It won't work that way. You need to, each one has its own protocol. Each one has its own way it's sort of being called. You need to look at that and understand how I'm going to build this out and why would I want to use this. So hopefully this chart can help you understand that you need to build out different ones for each set of domain data. Okay, we can look at the time, make sure we have enough time for the demos. So again, we talked about how we have here our host. For example, this is the client that we talked about before, right? So our host is Claude, ChatGPT, Cursor, LLM. Our AI uses our MCP client to request via our MCP JSON protocol to our MCP server. Our MCP server then goes and executes and pulls information from the database that you have, returns the data, and responds via the MCP. So again, this was someone who had questions about what is the LLM or something like that. So this gives a little bit, hopefully a little bit more clearer picture of how all three work together in unison.
One question on the previous slide. So MCP server and usually MCP server and the client runs on your desktop, right? When I'm using the cursor.
Yeah, so the client could be anywhere, to be honest. It could be online, could be on your desktop, could be where you're hosting your chat model. So it doesn't have to be strictly always desktop that you can call it. You can call it from cloud to cloud.
Oh, okay, got it.
So when we say the MCP client as a cloud, it looks like our ChatGPT. It seems like the desktop version of the cloud, right? And then the ChatGPT, and again the desktop version of it, because looks like cloud by itself is pretty broad, where it can contain the client or it can be the LLM. But it seems like the LLM is not the one. Maybe the calling it as a LLM might not be the right one, right? It should be the client, the desktop client, which is actually the MCP client. It looks like that's what my understanding is. Is that, am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, so LLM is example. You just can't be just call an LLM out of nowhere, right? LLM needs to be built into something, right? If you're using a chatbot, that LLM needs to be built into a framework, right? That LLM needs to be built using something. And when you build that something, whatever that something is, whether it be Claude, whether it be ChatGPT, whatever client you're using to communicate with that LLM model, inside that LLM architecture and how it's sort of built out, you need to have that MCP client as an option tool for it to call in order to start communicating with your MCP server.
Yeah. Thanks.
So hopefully that clears that part
Luis,
up.
actually, the LLMs are not really local, right? LLMs are hosted in the, like if ChatGPT hosts it, they never give away their LLM to you, correct?
Correct.
So essentially, you as a client, dumb client, whenever there is a need for an LLM, you connect to the Claude Sonnet or like ChatGPT, sorry, GPT-4 or 5 or whatever. But then like you're always, these guys are always in the mix. The LLMs are always in the mix, but they are remotely hosted, correct?
Yeah, so when you're talking to ChatGPT, it's gonna be download ChatGPT OpenAI's on your
Right.
desktop, you download Claude on your desktop. You're not downloading the LLM models into your computer.
Right.
You're communicating them via APIs.
Correct.
Yep. Okay, I think let's go to a little bit of history. So, where we are now with MCPs, like I said before, in 2024, Anthropic released this, and has jumped. You think that's so far away, but it's only been last year, right? In less than a year ago, that it sort of released as an open standard for everyone to use. In March 2025, things have gotten really hot, and so people are using it way a lot more. In April, OpenAI and Google saw that everyone's actually using this and it's actually really helpful for LLMs. So they're like, let's jump on the bandwagon. And they all started opening MCP support for their their frameworks and their client support. So again, now that's sort of becoming serious. Authorization frameworks are now using all authentications are being used inside MCPs. So for those who are sort of new to this, this is sort of like a gold bar for privacy and security when you're dealing with APIs and having authentications. So when you want to use something and you want to be able to use it on a public website, you need to have at least tokens and some sort of security before it gets used. Um, and that's what OAuth does. It helps create the extra security bound so it can't be hacked. People are trying to get in. That you need to have certain tokens and keys in order to access it. So those are really big for MCP. Um, Lots of companies, third-party companies, have come out and said, "Hey, we'll host your MCPs for you." Cloudflare, Zapier, Atlassian have now come out and said we do hosting for MCPs, and we'll go through a couple of other ones that are today. You can then register MCPs. We'll go through the registry today, where you can register and have other people use it. So let's say you built one that's just open that you don't care people. Let's say you have an API that that you want people to use all the time, and you don't care how it gets used. Let's say we're going to go through a weather one. Um, Again, you're using this to help people understand, get the weather, things like that. You can register that model, which we'll do today, and have other people who don't know much but can use it will then just register and connect to your MCP server that you created. Now hundreds of people can now have access to your MCP server that you created and get the response out. And because you didn't create you didn't create the APIs, you didn't create the server, it doesn't really matter, right? There's no cost coming to you. So it's still the early days MCP. It hasn't been the full year. It's not even been November of 2025, right? So there's still questions about authentication is really the best way. What about the API? Is how the API is being authenticated, being sent to MCP? How things are being discovered? How do we scale this for SaaS and multi-tenant apps? And how do we stop if you put 100 tools into an MCP server and the model just keeps trying one and over another, one over another, one over another, one over another, and boom, you hit your context window. You spent $15 on simply API calls because you couldn't define your tooling properly and because you used too much information and pulled much information from these MCPs. So there is still some plus and negatives happening with these MCP servers that still are, but again, hasn't even been a full year, and this has sort of been jumped up. So again, goes if you look to the right, this is something I was able to pull online saying how many people have been using MCP server implementations, and you can see it's scaling dramatically on how many people are actually using this now. And especially now because this 2025 was the year of the agents, everyone's trying to use MCP servers to get their agentic framework right. So again, one thing I just wanted to mention and make sure everyone knows that this is still experimental, right? These haven't been fully matured, things that are coming out. So again, talking about different things, I think we talked about this before, API authentication. Yes, you can make authentication really secure using OAuth, but how do you ensure user privacy? If there's multiple services happening at the same time, you have to make sure that you implement those coming in as well. How do you scale this for SaaS? So you can do it, but how do you do it efficiently, right? Without costing too much money. API complexity, like I said before, how do you know what's the right amount of tools that you can give to an AI that it can actually decide between 20 and 25 versus 100 of them? And how do you help the MCP servers understand that more? And that's still a challenge that they're still facing today. Discoverability. So remember, when an API, so when the LLM model wants to communicate with an MCP server, it will send a request through the MCP server to come back and say, what tools do you have? And then the LLM needs to ingest all those tools. So that discovery mode that it has every single time that, let's say, the conversation finishes, that eats tokens because that's input tokens. Context window limitations, there's still that limitations of LLMs. You know that right now we were able to increase to 128,000 tokens to 256. We know that Gemini 2.5 is still only 1 million tokens, so no one's really gone and beaten that so far with success. There was a time where Llama said they had a 10 million context window, but then it failed severely on security and memory. And again, some people still have security concerns from there. So one thing you need to be very wary of is you can use MCP servers, but let's say, like I said before, you can pull in MCP servers from everywhere, right? And you can use it. And one of them is GitHub. GitHub has said we have an MCP server. All you have to do is put in your token, and you can connect directly to it, and then you can send in and send out information without using the Git bash and the Git functions, right? So what happened? So Claude 4 and GitHub MCP will leak your private GitHub repositories, no questions asked. So because the GitHub Copilot MCP is a public MCP, someone can go in and look what your username is, try to see if there's any requests from the MCP server and pull in requests, because I remember you saying that these MCP servers contain logs, contain history information. So someone can go in, look at these MCP servers, and then you say, you know what? I want to go and understand a little bit more. So here's GitHub. Let's see if he has something hidden in there. So it'll go in there, and so because your Claude asked to see what all the different repositories are inside your GitHub before it pushed it, all the information is logged and stored in MCP, and someone was able to go in there and see all the MCP someone's private repositories being displayed, right? I just showed an example of one example of how MCPs can be used maliciously, and how people are hacking it as well in terms of trying to get information from other individuals. So as MCPs go on, you have to be very wary of using public MCPs and what information you're using. So Ruben Cohen is one person I follow on LinkedIn. He's very forward thinking. So he says that treat your MCP inventory the same you would treat dependencies and production code. Controlled, monitored, and unchangeable unless explicitly approved. Anything less is an open door. So again, when you look at MCP servers and see how you have it, it's not enough just to have it open and that's it. You need to control it. You need to see what's happening, who's using it, what information is being taken out, because again, you want this to be private and you want people to be abusing that as well. So that's sort of the introduction of MCPs. So I'm going to be copying a link here in the chat before we start the demo, just to see how everyone remembered a little bit of this. So let me just put this in the chat. And there's some good questions in the chat. Maybe we can talk about those on Wednesday, because you have to go through the demos, and those are really business questions that people have come out, and it can't really be discussed within 5 minutes. Okay, so in the chat, I posted a little quiz. It should be pretty straightforward and simple. Again, just a little remember of what we talked about this morning, just to get a little before in. I'll give everyone about 2-3 minutes before we start, and then we'll go through the questions itself. Okay, so I'm going to start. Before we start, Shruti had a very good question. What does hosting an MCP server means? It means in order for it to be live and for you to interact with it, it needs to have example, yeah. So Seth talked about you need to have it loaded on something for it to execute on. So when you host something, you need to have a compute attached to your server in order to send information and to interact and have it live. So we'll go through hosting MCP server today and what that means as well. So we'll see that very soon. Okay, so let's go through the questions. Okay, hopefully everyone passed with flying colors, but if not, it's fine. Let's go through them. So according to the presentation, which organizations developed the MCP? I think it should be an easy one for everyone. You can rate your answer in the chat, and I'll just choose the best one from the top for the individuals who are writing it. But if you could just put in the chat your responses for this question, and then I'll go through all of them. Okay, 10 more seconds. Like, of course, they're usually like, this is Anthropic, of course, no one else. So that's right. So again, Anthropic was the only one who came out with MCP, not OpenAI, not Google, not Microsoft. Anthropic was more into the coding and be able to extract more information. So I think I don't answer the question. This should be very simple. So I try to use this example very much, right? So that's right. So this one should be the very simple one for everyone. It should be true because again, the point of using MCP server is to connect your MCP clients to your employees MCP server. Okay, what message format does MCP use for structured communication between clients and servers? Okay, so remember we talked about how there's different protocols to be using, and we know JSON file is very structured. So I see everyone putting in the right response in the chat. It is JSON RPC 2.0. So is MCP a proprietary closed source protocol? Okay, a couple more seconds. Yeah, so yeah, Nish put the right response. MCP was open sourced for everyone. So it means that anyone is able to use that protocol, just like anyone can use APIs, and they haven't been closed off to everyone. So the answer is false because then it's an open protocol and anyone can use it and don't have to worry about paying for it or not using it on that sense. So what's the primary purpose of using an MCP? Yeah, that's right. I think everyone's putting in the chat to standardize. So you don't use MCP to train language models. You shouldn't. The purpose of it is to connect, right? You can't use MCP to increase the context windows. We know that context windows of LLMs are set when the model is trained. You can't do that. And APIs still have functionality, and you're not supposed to, and MCPs connect through APIs as well. So it's not to replace APIs functioning. So finally, purpose of MCP is to standardize how LLMs can connect to these different tools.
One question on this.
Yeah.
Underneath MCP server, it's calling the APIs only, right? So when you're calling GitHub MCP server, underneath GitHub MCP server is calling the APIs of GitHub, right?
Yes, correct.
So it's not replacing, basically it's a replacement for that.
Yeah, so this, like I said before, it's standardizing how an LLM can communicate with those APIs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the last one, I agreed with actually both second as well as the third one. For the third one, it does eventually increase the context window, right?
And so yeah, so that maybe a little bit confusing, maybe wording. So when we talk about context window, we mean that how much inputs and outputs an LLM can read and consume. So let's say Cloud4 can only consume 128,000 tokens before running into its limit. So I think the wording may have been confusing because you're not trying to increase the context window of an LLM. An LLM cannot increase its context window, but that will increase the memory consumption. So maybe that's where the wording is confused. But when you use MCPs, it will use more of its context history, but it won't increase the context memory of an LLM. That was maybe a little bit confusing. Okay, we'll go to the next question. According to the presentation, traditional APIs are more flexible and have better dynamic discovery than MCPs. True or false? All right, so this one, we know that in traditional APIs, if you don't call the right function, you don't choose a traditional, if a field column is added extra to an API call, it could fail, and you can't. There's only store that information. This is why MCP servers are a little bit more dynamic because they can they send what's available, what's a list to an LLM, and the LLM is able to decide which tools they want to use, able to see what errors are doing, when tools or calls are doing, and be able to even edit and call different tool sets that it needs in order to get the best response. So traditional APIs are not more flexible than MCPs. So what's the first step an LLM takes when using an MCP server? Okay, so we know the answer is tool discovery, as everyone says, but what happens if you want to click tool authentication? So you go first, you have your discovery of what's happening. Then it goes to your tool selection of saying, okay, I want to select this tool. Then you need to authenticate the tool set that you're going to be using, and then you would execute. So stop in those four part processes. The presentation warns about a vulnerability where Cloud and MC Cloud could potentially leak private responses. Yes, true or false? This one should be easy. If you guys were awake, hopefully you had some coffee. That's right. It's true. Which one the following is not listed as an implementation challenge for MCP? All right, so the answer is lack of industry adoption. So why is it not API authentication? We know that it's still having, it's still developing. We said before, there is some authentication that still need to be happening. Sometimes there be so much information being sent to an LLM that it can't handle everything. So there is a challenge for an MCP where it has context window limitations depending on the LLM you're using. And again, sailing it for many different companies, different areas, still an issue from there. So lack of industry adoption we see is false because we see that it's catching fire and lots. Google and Microsoft have joined in and are now using this as a top tier for their areas. And the last part is this. This patient advises you should only trust MCP servers from the owner of a resource. True or false? All right, so the last one is true. So again, we talked about before how MCP servers can be used maliciously, can be looked at what's in your REST information, can pull information, what you're trying to achieve, even can even extract things that you don't want it to do, right? So there was a quote that says, I think the quote said, secure your API before someone steals it for you, right? So that's something you should always be wary of and be very careful. So we finished it, and then that should be it, and we go from there. Yeah, open source is evolving, but again, you need to think about security, and you need to I'll talk to you about how you can actually grab a public registered host model and then make it your own, so you don't have to worry about security as well. All right, so we'll take 1 minute, and then we'll get started on the demo.
Louis, why do you like weather service so much, man?
It's the easiest one.
I know, I know. I was just kidding. Yeah, but this is too good, Louis. Thanks a lot for this. Actually, the authenticity is a big problem that we are facing now. But luckily, we are still hosting, self-hosting, and local, limited kind of a thing. But cross functional domains is a very big headache for us, you know.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so I think we have to start now. Hopefully we can get through this. So everyone has gone through and done the installation. If not, don't worry about it. You can just follow along today's demo, and then later on you could try it yourself. And if you get stuck on anything, we have Wednesday's meeting and be able to and walk through it yourself. So don't worry if you're going through now. Please don't try to interrupt the class saying I can't get this or I can't do this or something like that. Which we just have to go through the demo. And again, if there's something that's coming up you can't do, I can stay 10 minutes after class. But then really that's what the Wednesday's office hour is about. So try again. Maybe this time do it more calm. Watch the videos and see if there's something that you missed. And then Wednesdays, if you're still stuck with it, feel free to join and say, "Hey, Luis, I tried running the demo and I failed. Can we figure out what's happening?" So again, you can scan this that you're putting this in, and they'll give you a walkthrough as today as well what we're going through. So today's scenario, your organization has a public API and open API. You want to make sure your API consumption continues to grow and thrive. Remember, for those who create APIs, they want their API to be used. So you have to understand that agents will arguably the ones that actually be driving the API traffic in the future. And you want to gauge how usable your APIs are by agents. So let's say you have an existing APIs in your company, but how are they really being used by agents and can they understand them? So you want to publish an MCP server for your API that you have control over, and when you want to get early feedback from and MCP and agent AI use. So again, you can copy this with your phone. You can use your phone to grab this as well. If not, I'll put this link in the chat for those who want to use this later. The chat box. Okay. So for the initial setup, you need to have node.js installed on your computer. Simple check is you open your terminal, you type in node_-v, and it should tell you what version you have on your computer. If you don't have it installed, it's okay. You can view this demo right now and then install this later because it still take you a couple times to go in there and install node.js.
Just a quick question. If we use brew install for Node, probably it is a different version. I'm not sure. So it's like V24. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as you have Node, some sort of version in your computer, that's fine.
Okay.
Cloud uses this just to access it. I think 24 is the newest one anyway, so we'll go through the different steps. So make sure that again we said installed. So example, this is one version, but if you don't have it, get that on your computer. Next is sign up for Speak Easy Gran. So this is where we're going to be talking about how we're going to be hosting this information. So you should be able to go to this website. I think in the directions I told you guys to go here. If you don't have it, I'll still put this in the chat for those who are slightly going on. All you do is scroll down to the bottom, and I think there is a part that says Start Building. You click Start Building. It'll bring you to another website, and then because I'm already signed in, it's going to tell you to put a company. When you put that company in, I just put VSF Club. It doesn't really matter. And again, since we're only doing a demo for today, don't worry about billing or anything like that. You're just doing all free versionings, and it all works for free from that side. Next is we're going to this NWS OpenAI weather network area. So again, this is the website I'll put in here. This is the OpenAI JSON format we'll be working on. So this is actually from the National Weather Service, Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They created an API web service for those who are curious and want to know what's going on for critical forecast alerts and observations. So you go to the site, all you have to go to is specifications. And in the specification area, you can see alerts, active alerts, type, activation, aviation. As you can see all the different tool sets that are already made for you, right? And it's all done through the API. You don't have to create anything. All you have to do now is to download it. And how do you download it? There is this API.json file that they have right here. You click on it, and it's going to show you all this big text here. And this is what you need. This is the gold. So all you do is click a file, save page as. When you save it, I saved mine as what I put here. I think I saved it yesterday just to try it again one more time. My downloads. Weather open, I just call it weather dash OpenAI and then type in .json at the very end. Because again, we want to make sure this is saved as a JSON file. So I'll put that in the chat. So when you save it like this, and it will save into a JSON file for you. So when it's done, you should
So,
change
Louis,
it.
one quick question. So is the idea that like you're going to write an MCP servers on the top of the weather service APIs that are available?
Correct.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So this could be any open, this could be anything. Again, I'm just doing an example of weather, but this could be any site that has an open API JSON file already built out as well. So we're just showing how we're going to be doing this, just this one. Okay, so once you saved it and have this stored on your downloads, you're good to go. So next is to ensure you have Claude Desktop installed. If you haven't had Claude Desktop installed yet, please go here. You don't have to pay for a pro version or anything like that. There is a free version for this, but download Claude Desktop. Again, we're going to use Anthropic because one, they built this out, right? Okay. Once you have Claude Desktop installed, no, it just likes to jump on me. Where are we? We're ready to go. So if everyone's good to go, just give me a thumbs up in the chat.
Just give a couple of minutes if you don't mind. Oh, by the way, this specification, does it need to be in a specific extension or something, or it doesn't matter really?
.json. So I put that in the chat. When you
Oh.
save this, it needs to be exactly that same name and .json.
Are we waiting, Luis?
So
Yeah.
once you've done the download, what do you and then you've installed Claude, right? So what do we need to do next? Is there a next step? Sorry.
If you have Claude installed, I was waiting for people to get thumbs up in the chat when you're
Oh.
done. But if you have logged into Speakeasy, created an account, downloaded the JSON API, and installed Claude on your computer, then you're good to go for next steps. Yep. So remember, for the weather site, you go to Overview, Specifications, and underneath weather.gov API, there is that file under there. You click on that, and I'll give you this. And this is where you save the page as, and you put it as weather.openapi.json. Come and give about 2 more minutes, and it should be good to go.
Sorry, quick question. I was able to open the API, but download option, I missed it. Where is that?
So for this, do you see this page, or you have this?
Yeah, I am able to see that page.
You go File and you save page as.
Oh, okay. Save it. Got it.
And you name it to the file extension I have in the.
Got it.
Okay, 1 more minute, and then we'll start. Yeah, I like Edge's tabs, and they actually have a way to an LLM that actually clusters your tabs for you on Edge. So that's why I sort of liked it on that.
Nice, nice. Never thought about it. Yeah, I'll give it a try.
Like I like PC, but when I went to a Mac, I really enjoyed how pretty it is. I was like, oh,
Why
I
not?
still have my PC habits with me.
Oh, same as we all transitioned from Windows to Mac, right? Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good to start. So yes, so we're gonna start to do this. So we're gonna get started in Gram. So then you go to Gram, you log in, right? So you should see mine's already has a button here, but it should be a button that says Get Started. For those who have not seen that yet, let me know when you guys are there.
This is for get started on the MCP servers, right?
Yeah. So you click on the left side and click MCP Server, and there should be something that says Get Started.
Can you tell me about what this gram is doing?
Yeah, we'll go through the different parts, and we'll talk about what we're going to be building out for you. So we're building out the server inside Gram right now. So Gram's going to host our server for us.
So we are basically hosting on the cloud, MCP server on the cloud.
Yes.
Luis, it's not an MCP exchange also, right? Like it's just an hosting service.
It's just a hosting service. So we'll go through how we can connect to it. So when everyone clicked on Get Started, and then once you're there, on the next step is this is upload your Open API spec, right?
Mm-hmm.
You click on that, upload that JSON file that we just saved in your downloads into that section right now. So on that part, let's see if we can zoom in here. I'll say drop it in. Name the API name weather_open_API. Under API name. And then press continue once you're done that section. Okay, can I get a thumbs up for those who have clicked on this step right now? We're going to be creating the tool step.
What is this slug?
Which part?
It says configure MCP server slug.
Let's see, go here.
Configure MCP server slug.
So this one is your server, or it's going to be that's what the Gram uses to configure it. So don't worry about that. Select is just a terminal name that they decide to be fancy with themselves, which pretty much is just the API host you can see on my page of how it's going to be loaded on your hosted URL. So once you hit that part, just click continue, and you should see it. So when you click on your tool sets, you should be able to see your your weather open API there, right there. So if you see it, I just need to give a thumbs up. That means you're able to successfully register it on Gram. Okay, awesome. All right, so the next step after this is you'll see there's lots of different tools that can be used, right? So when we click on the 53 tools that you'll see on the bottom of the tool set, you click on it, and you'll see there's going to be, for me, there's only one right now, but there's a bunch of these different tools that are happening. So you're going to click Add and Remove Tools. When you're in the Add Remove Tools, you'll see that there's going to be a lot. And remember I said before, if you give a lot of tools to an LLM, it will get confused. So to sort of unselect all, you can click Enable All, Disable All to sort of enable them, disable them, so you don't have to do all that. And what we're going to look for, the tool we're going to be using today is Alerts Active Region. All you have to do is click that. And it'll show on the top one tool. Once you're done that, we go back to MCP. And if you're done, you'll see that you can change it to private, and then you'll see one tool on it. So we'll need to change it to public to be like mine. So you should be able to click on it.
So when you click on MCP, I'm not seeing one tool there actually. So I clicked on that. Was there any other action other than just clicking one API which you mentioned?
Nope. After you click on it, that should only show only one tool from there. Sorry, I just couldn't hear your question.
I'm not seeing that one tool. Like, can you just can you get back to the MCP how it shows up as? Okay, there you go.
Click on here, you click this top right, and you click on Manage Tools. You should show that you have one tool at that top. If you did it correctly.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. If you have that, you should be good to go.
And I don't see public.
Yeah, so does yours say private right now?
Yeah, private and test. I see only those two.
So we need to change that to public, right? So you can see example, this one, like I said before, within 4 months, the UI has changed a little bit from what it is.
Okay.
But it's fine. We can go back here. So we go to MCP, click on our website here, and the bottom here, you just click on make it to public.
Oh, visibility. Okay. Yeah, got it.
So one thing to know is that if you see a website here and you see this already up here, your MCP is already hosted and already good to go. So that means your server has been hosted, has been done, has been connected with your tools, and we're good to go from there. So next, what we're going to go down is we're going to copy down the file. So if you scroll down on your MCP server, there should be something called pass-through authentication. And what I want you to do is click on that and just copy it. So if I can just get a thumbs up for those who have gone there, has ensured that they've been changed it to public and then copied this on that side. I just need a thumbs up for those who have gone down to that step because we're going to be done grand really soon.
So what exactly is the page you're looking at? Is that the view copy config?
So I click MCP, right? I click on the top and I scroll all the way down, and then I should be able to copy the pass-through authentication.
Okay.
All right, looks like everyone is there. So once you have that copied, now let's go to our cloud code.
Hey, Louis, just a quick question. I'm not able to see that pass-through authentication. Do you know what I could be missing?
Where did you click on MCP and then do you see this?
Yeah.
This when you click on that box, do you see this top part?
I see just the hosted URL. I don't see the visibility options.
Okay, and do you follow the exact same steps that
I
everyone has?
think there is an advanced option. Click on that.
Hmm. Yeah, go ahead. I'll figure it out.
So yeah, it should be there's no extra buttons to press on. It should be something that has this part bottom. So again, if you were stuck on it before, just double check that when you configured it from the beginning, all you have to do is drop your file in here, put an API name to it, press continue, press continue, press continue again. Check your MCP server, adjust the tools to only one tool only to make sure we're not confusing our LM model. Once you've sort of configured that, we change it from public to private to public. And then scroll down and you should see their pass-through authentication. Okay, so now that we copy this section here, you can see that it's going to go and connect to this API call, this URL. And this URL is the same as our custom slug or same as our hosted URL that we have up here. So I named mine VSF Club, whether OpenAI, you can name yours wherever you want, click save. And when you host it, you see that you're connecting to that value. So again, that's what we're doing from that side. So next is we're going to open up Claude. So in your Cloud desktop, you'll see a bunch of different things. Again, yours could be different if you're on a PC versus a Mac. I forget how those different looks, but we're definitely going to the same things that we'll be looking for, right? So on this left side, there should be your settings, and then you want to go to your developer tab.
So before that, I see coding and developing. So am I supposed to select that?
Sorry,
I launched Claude, and
yes.
then soon after I launched it, what are you into? And then my name, and then pick 3 topics to explore is what it says. So
Yeah, just choose coding, coding tab. You can choose whatever you want from that.
okay. Oh, it's not installed yet. Okay. Damn it. I thought that it already installed after doing that. So I'm sorry. I guess I need to install now.
No worries. It'll take about 2 seconds. So when you go in the developer, there's something called edit config. Example, you can see here on how even on Claude it changed. Usually it was before in the middle, but now they changed it up top.
How did you get to this screen, general and developer?
Yeah, so I went to settings. So you click on your you choose your name, and then you just click on settings.
Yeah, I clicked on settings.
And then there should be on your desktop app, general extensions or general developer. And you click on the developer tab.
No, it shows profile, account, privacy, building, features, connector, cloud code.
And you don't see, are you on the desktop app?
Yes, Cloud desktop app.
Does anyone else not have those functionalities and are you using a PC or Mac?
Mac.
Mac. Have you downloaded the latest Mac
I
config?
got the downloaded the latest as well this morning.
Okay.
So I could see those develop desktop app and I could see general extension and developer. So Sudhir, what did you choose when you were setting up
Desktop
the
app,
cloud?
general extensions and developer. General extensions and developer is what is there on the desktop.
Oh, shoot.
I think I
Yeah,
might have
developer is
just.
what we have to choose now.
Okay, okay. So there is more options for me: profile, account, privacy, billing, and then desktop app and general extension and developer.
Yep. Yep. So
Yeah,
exactly what you-
even we have that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think I missed the part of installing the desktop version. So it looks like it's doing the terminal thing for me. So soon after you download that the DMG file, right, for Mac, when you open it, it just comes with a prompt and then says all set here. So basically it lets you download. It lets you select whatever your configuration needed or like the help needed, and then after that, then it just gives you prompts, right? How do you specifically select the desktop version? I think I missed something there.
Did you download Claude Code? 'Cause there's two. There's Claude Desktop and there's Claude Code.
Maybe I installed the Cloud Code actually.
Yeah, Cloud Code is terminal.
So you'll see all terminals. The Claude Code's actually like a physical CLI, like it's not a CLI, it's a UI interface on that, right? So
Okay.
when you click on the link I put in the chat and you click Cloud AI download, you should just see Meet Cloud on your desktop and just click Mac OS and just download that.
Okay, just give me 1 second here then.
Hey guys, just due to time, I still have to. I'll just like for those who are slowly catching up, you'll have to just watch the video, and if any questions, meet me on Wednesday if you still have any issues from there. So on the local MCP servers, you click Edit Config. So it's going to ask me to update a configuration, right? Sorry, let me just click here. So for me, it opened up a file on Finder and Cloud in a Cloud folder. Not sure if everyone has, when you click on that, pop this up.
Yes.
Cloud desktop config. I don't see the cloud desktop config.
So when you click Edit Config, you have to click the button Edit Config and click on that, and then you should see this pop up happen.
Yes, cloud desktop config. Yes.
We double click on that, and you'll see something pop up. So for you, it will just be 2 brackets and be possibly empty, right?
Yes.
So what you do is, again, going back to our file, make sure that you copied it properly. We'll go back to the cloud. And you go back to our ngram page. This is what you're copying in there. So this, what you copied to that box, needs to go into this. So you simply copy, paste. I'm going to change this value to my name because this one I know who it is, Luis. And then you click File, Save.
So within the braces, you need to copy the configuration.
Just copy, paste it over into that desktop configuration.
Okay.
I'll pause here for 1 minute just for get individuals who sometimes it takes sometimes it takes their terminal to load a little bit and save it, but make sure the most important part is click Save.
Can you please repeat the cloud setting?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So when you go to Developer tab, there should be a button called Edit Config. When you click Edit Config, it should bring you to a Finder, which shows you this file here, cloud_desktop_config.json.
So you put in Luis, right? What is that name, Luis? Where are you put? Which is the one we need to copy there?
So when you copy and you open this up to your Claude desktop config, when you paste it in from your ngram, this should show something called value, right? So that could be any value. So you can put your
Oh,
own
it can be
name.
any value. It can be any value. Okay.
Any name. It could be your own name. Who's like whoever's using this agent. So you can put your own name in there.
Okay.
Luis, what is this tool? Because by default it opens me browser, but not this.
You
Is
can
this
open it.
ID?
You can open any editor, text editor.
Oh, this just editor. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, I just copy that.
Yeah. You just copy it from the gram site and you just paste it into this to the file. And the only thing you're changing here is this who the agent is, just to keep track of who's using what. I'm gonna give one more minute and then we'll have to continue.
Louis, the URL that we see there, the getram.ai MCP. So I had given my own endpoint. So that still should be okay, right? But the
Yes.
further ones, maybe it won't work.
Yep.
Okay.
Since this doesn't have any token authorization, which means that it's open for anything. There is no authentication required in here, right? Is that understanding correct? In the args, I don't see any token.
Correct. This is pass-through authentication. This is why we made it public. So we don't have to click it to be private. Hope you're okay sharing the weather with other individuals and not make that too much private. Okay, we hit the 1 minute mark. So after you're done saving it and you're done with that, for example, I changed my label here to Luis. We have to restart Claude and test in Claude. So once you save it, close your file out, and then close out Claude. As in the bottom, quit, and then reopen Claude again. So now that you've done that, all you simply type into Claude is what tools can you use? So I have enabled other extensions. So you'll see not all the tools that you'll see that I have, but we should see the weather tool be set up as one. Okay, so I have different extensions enabled, so I can do browser control, communication, file index, but you should see something called information and weather. So that means we configured everything correctly. If we've gone into the configuration and asked what tools can you use, and we ask get information and weather, you should see that as part of one of your tools that we created so far.
Yeah, gram weather OpenAI.
Marine weather alerts.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, I said marine weather alerts.
Yeah, well, it should be different.
I get the gram weather OpenAI.
It's an LM, right? Non-deterministic output. So you might see different things in different ways. As long as you can see that it shows information and weather, that's in there. Because before, this doesn't have anything there, right? So if you go to your tools, you should see gram weather open API.
Yes,
right?
I can see it in my.
Perfect. I mean, it's been enabled.
Louis, for me, it says the gram weather API has failed and says server disconnected. I can see the config on the UI, but I don't know why it says it's failed.
If you copy the config exactly, probably you have double parentheses in your configuration. Just check if you have double parentheses.
Oh, okay.
In your config.
Yeah, just delete everything in your config.
You need to replace everything. If you are copying the config in between the parentheses, then it is a problem, but you just replace the whole thing, the config, then it should work.
Yes, for me, it says like it cannot connect to that MCP server.
And do you see it in the extension?
Extensions. Oh, I don't see anything in extensions. It's kind of
Then
blank.
you need to go. Did you restart your Claude?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I
So the
mean,
only thing,
is there a different way I shut it down and restart it?
the only thing is double check your MCP. You made it public.
Yeah.
Make sure you have this as public, which is the most important part, or else you won't be able to connect to it. So
Yeah,
double
I did actually.
check that, and then you're copying the pass-through authentication.
Yeah, I did that.
You copy all this, and in your config, you're supposed to just replace everything that's in there.
I can see the local MCP server. It says that in the developer. How do I verify it again?
So again, you go to your profile settings, developer, and then you should see something in here. If you don't have that, it's fine. Just click edit config. And you should see your Claude desktop underscore config.json file.
I did that actually. It shows me that, but for some reason,
When you double click on
yes,
it, you would
yeah,
see your file still. Did you click, like when you open it, you need to click save when you change it as well?
yeah. I mean, it shows all my code there actually. The config file, it shows there.
And did you change the value to your name?
Value to my name? I did not
Yes.
get it.
Where it says in parentheses value, just remove the parentheses and just put your name on there.
Oh, okay. My name is what appears in Claude.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I think I did not do that.
Okay. So the next
So
part is,
that should exactly match my name that I have set up in Claude.
but that one doesn't matter. It's just showing you like where you on Gram just to track who's been using what. But it's a required value. All right, so now that we know our extension is up and we can use it, how do we make sure we can actually do that cool call? So let's say give me the active weather alerts for area California. Okay, so we can see that Claude was able to think about what to do. Instead of pulling it directly from the internet, it noticed that we have a tool, right? So it says, I'll check the active weather alerts for you since CA reference to California or Canada. I'll check by checking the New for California West Coast region. So it's going to add in the region. Claude wants to use the weather open area alerts active region from Gram Weather Open API. So we can see that right away, it recognized the tool and wants to use our tool and saying, this is the parameters we're going to be using. Do you allow me to do this? So I'll click allow once.
Is there any preference you set? Because when I do that, it directly went to the web. But when I asked to use the tool, then it used the tool. Is there any preference we need to set which one to use?
So for me, I ensure that your tool is available and working, right? You should have this already active on your grandmother.
Yeah, it is active, but only when I insisted to use the tool, then it used it actually.
And did you use the exact same wording I put up here?
No, different, little bit different. Yeah, maybe.
So try the exact same wording that I wrote, because again, the whole point of using this one is active alerts, right?
Yeah,
So,
okay, that makes sense.
So we can see here a little bit more of what's happening behind the tooling. So it requested this, and the response from our MCP server was able to go grab the features, information, type of alerts, information of the different areas and different zones, and give this big chunk of text to our LLM. So it was able to give lots of information. And then it did was analyzed it. I got the results from this West Coast, the marine alerts, blah, blah. Let me summarize the key alerts for the users. Small craft advisory around West Coast. These are the effects, blah, blah, blah. So then it came, and once it understood what it needed to give to me, it gave me a good printout from there. So that's how MCP servers work. You give it information, you feed it in there, and it gets information back by using those toolings. Now, this gets really complicated is when you need to use business and you need to create your own APIs and you need to create your own make your own alerts from there, right? So if we went back and remember we saw the MCP had so many tools, right? Um, when we click add or remove tools, we can see that these are already built out from their API functions of different things you can use and get, right? So if I wanted to say, okay, um, give me information about the radar station, I can add that to my MCP server. If I want to get more information to my MCP server that it can pull out and get, this is where you would come in and add it. So again, remember talking about you have to be very careful of how much information you put in because if I put all 53 tools, the LM will then have to figure out and sort of filter itself out of saying, okay, well, I should only be looking at these ones versus this one, and it could give you a faulty result. So when you build this out, try to keep them to a minimum. I would say maybe even less than 20 for good results, but you could go up to 50, and if you have strong prompt engineering, you'd be able to look at it. So what did we do and what how does this all come together is that Gram is a free it's not again it's free for certain things but again if you want to get deeper into different areas you can pay for more but what it did was it grabbed the OpenAI JSON file it hosted it on its site listed all the tools you're able to call and gave us a URL that we could use. So now with this URL that we were able to get this custom slug we feed it to our LLM to use this, right? So this is now what we call our MCP client. So our MCP client communicates to our MCP server, which is here, and able to then go to the Weather Network API, pull the information from here, give it back to our custom slug here, and then which then feeds it back to our LLM. So this is how on that side it's able to read and use. So we're going to pause there today just for of time. But as I was showing up before, we've gone in and we've gone this. So what's next is you created this great tool, but you want other people to use this. So we could finish off with this for today. What you want to do is you want people to use this and you want other people to say, hey, actually I created this great MCP tool. It's free and everyone should be able to use this as well. You can push your MCP to something called a public index. So other people can discover, query it, and even use it as a tool/agent. So by registering it, anyone can build their own agent, call your MCP to offload a workload, and get the best route without having them to go and build and host them themselves. So let's go through one example of how to host and publish your own MCP servers together. And also sort of be the end of class today. And then next class, we'll go show you how to create private MCP servers. So next we're going to copy that server URL that we saw on our MCP. So let me just minimize this. Push to the side. So our MCP, we have this hosted URL, right? So all we're going to do is copy this. And copy that on that right side. We're going to go to MCP CO submit. So open this on another page, put that website in here. I'll put the website in here for everyone as well. So when you get to the site, you can say, hey, this is an MCP server. We can use weather app. We're going to put our URL, a URL that we got from Graham here. Copy that to that URL here. And then I think our server config, and we copy this part in the bottom. and then click submit. So then it's going to ask you, it's going to be a weather app, this using Gram to get weather alerts. And then you click submit server. And that's it. So we submitted a server and now it's now public. Now, what's the difference between this is that now, just like how you submitted a weather server for everyone else, you can see going into the mcp.so page, you can then look at other people's MCP servers and then add this to your Claude code if you want. So example, if Claude didn't have, okay, I want to actually get Google Maps, right? I don't, does this have a Google Maps section? No. So let's go, I want to add Google Maps. I click on Google Maps. Someone created an MCP server for it. I grab this and I put this into my desktop configuration. And I created an MCP server. I created an MCP connection to this MCP server for Google Maps. So from this one, I think this one you need to get a Google Maps API key. So this one isn't for free because it will tell you to use your API for that one. Some of them will be free that don't require you to have a certain API keys to use. But this shows you how you can quickly now use different MCP servers, make different clients, and connecting them quickly to your LM agent. And again, take your time, go through this. There's a lot of different MCPs. Again, this is the first page, and there's hundreds of thousands of them. These are the top featured ones. And you can go from there, just like how we created the weather app. There's Fetch, there's GitHub, there's Cloudflare, the Puppeteer, you can do web scraping, how to cook, different places like that as well. So again, look at the different areas. This isn't the only one. This is just one of many. In the next class, we're going to start off with how to create private a private API, and we're going to be creating this in Zuplo. So the difference between doing this and doing something in Zuplo is that in Zuplo, we're doing something that has security and authentication. So again, we don't want anyone to know what's happening with our weather because we're super paranoid. So we can use Zuplo, which is also one that we could talk about next week, to then start something for free and then upload that same OpenAI API in here and then host it and then use that host to connect. But this time we'll be using tokens and things to get inside. So that will be next class. So thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you learned a little bit more about how to connect to MCPs. Hope it doesn't, now that you saw the real life versus implementation, hopefully it doesn't seem too scary to use, but you can use but it shows you quickly how if something with a good framework already exists from Anthropic, because we know Anthropic uses MCPs, they made it. You simply just connect an MCP configuration to it and they can start extracting information from there. So I'll stay back for 5 minutes and thank you everyone and hope you have a great Saturday.
Hey, Luis, one quick question actually. I'm so the thing is right, like, okay, fine. All we did was we have the open API specification that is published by the weather service. We did it using Gram for exposing that as an MCP server, right? Imagine if we were to do it from the scratch. Like example, you have your own APIs, but you have to write your code up the MCP server, right? I just want to take some cues on, can you see the code that is generated, that Gram generated, wrapping up the API as an MCP server? Can we see that?
I don't think that the Gram gives you that flexibility.
Okay, sure.
Um,
But of course, I can ask an LLM to generate, hey, this is my API. Can you generate an MCP server code for this? Sure, it can. But I'm curious in like, does the Gram or any other tools out there already does it for you? Of course,
unfortunately,
you should be ready to expose your API though. That's a different problem.
unfortunately they charge, so they
Oh,
they don't
okay.
give
Sure.
that information out for free, right? So the
Okay.
free one you can do one hosted server and then do it for free, whatever. But as soon as you like, oh, I want to know how you guys are doing it, they won't do it because it's closed source for them. But to create an MCP server, once you have this set up, you don't have to use Gram. You can just, once you have an API that you want to call, you can build your own server.
Right, right.
Yeah, you can just build your own server out using telling them, hey, I built my own server out. And then Claude knows how to do it exactly.
Right, right. That's what I was hinting at too, right? And like the only thing is the hooks into what are the industry standards. I know, like you also said that, like the authentication and authorization pieces are still in great discussion, and then using the OAuth 2.1 is currently probably the not standard, but people are using it kind of a thing. But like I was saying, like if there are hooks onto, hey, this is how you implement, like similar to how you use any tools, right? Like, for example, I'm not sure about Python, but Java has the annotations, like you do the, not annotations, the AOP, right? You say, oh, everything will be, like done. Any API call will do an authorization just with an annotation, for example, right? Something like that, like, and paved path for an MCP server saying, hey, the authentication authorization layer will be here. Your MCP server wrapper for the API goes here, something like that,
Yeah, so I think this would be something like this, where it has your command, your arguments, your authorization,
Uh-huh.
in your environment variables.
Right.
So when we go to when we look next week at Zuplo, it'll actually show you how the build looks like. So you actually build Docker with, and with that Docker zone, how it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, I have done this, like Dockerization, like for the, and a dumb MCP server myself, but I just was looking for like like an industry standard way kind of a thing,
Yeah, yeah.
We use a Node code. Sorry, JavaScript.
You can use anything actually.
Yeah, but most of the popular people use is JavaScript, right? Nowadays.
TypeScript, you mean, not JavaScript.
TypeScript.
Okay, awesome. All right.
One question to you, Luis.
Yep.
Your MCP server, like you said, it's a client server architecture, right? Does it have a port that it runs on?
So it has a code. So
Server port. Usually client server ports as a port, your port it has to run on, right? Does this MCP server run on a port?
on a port, yes, yes. So this server right now on Gram, it had everything sort of simple. Just going back to what we're talking about before, all this gets deployed, just like how you would deploy an API, out with REST keys and this. Let me see if I can show you how that looks like here. I wonder if I do.
Please, now is the time. You can't dilly-dally anymore. Okay, we have to live in 1 hour. Okay, even if you do that, we'll be reaching there only by 12 or 12:30. Or maybe
Satya, can you mute your thing, sir?
Hey, I'm sorry, man. Sorry.
No worries. So it didn't show me here what the port is, but it needs
Because when I Google it, I don't see that it runs on a port, because you can run hundreds of servers on the one local also, right? So it doesn't connect to a port. Like when I tried, I mean, I could not get that how it works.
It's a REST API, which is export. It's a web service.
That's the
Basically.
domain name, right? I think by default the port will be something like
It would be 443 probably, right? HTTP.
Yeah.
But then it's probably the
No,
API.
you can run hundreds of servers. If everything is cannot run on 443, right? If you're having like 100 servers on MCP servers local hosted on your local.
Yeah, then I don't know. Like maybe you have to choose another port.
Yeah,
you don't ask. It doesn't ask for port. It automatically runs. I'm saying.
But this is not the MCP servers that's running on your local, right?
I'm just asking when I'm hosting an MCP server
locally
on my local. I'm not connecting to any port. I'm not configuring any port.
Actually, I've done in one MCP server, and I had exactly same problem, port conflicts, right? I had to configure an explicit port where my MCP server runs on. When you're, like, for example, you have a Docker running, correct? If you have packaged it as a Docker, right? You can specify, like a host port to the Docker port kind of a thing, correct? I mean, Sudhir, you know this, like that's what I did actually. I had to fake
because
my port.
I configured like my 5 MCP servers on my local, but I never provided a port number. So I was just curious, like how does it work?
So it's interesting you said that, because I had the same issue when I was running, I was building a UI using React and having MCP servers at the back end, and they would conflict and hit each other in terms of, I can't run this because this port's busy, or I can't use this because it's on that side. So although they were separate, they were still defaulting to domain to the normal 8,000 local domain port, right? So how I was able to go around it was I had to specifically put, okay, use my React forum 8,000 for MCP servers, 8,001 to 8. I'll give it a range from 8,001 to 8,010, and then that way when it deployed and started using it, I was able to reduce the conflict that way. But I'm
So
very
you're
interested.
saying MCP servers, each of the MCP server hosted on your local will be using underneath some port,
Yes,
a different port for each server.
Correct.
And second question I have is Google APIs, right? I can write my own MCP server on host, and you can write your own MCP server on it, right? So, so one API can have multiple MCP servers. Is that understanding correct?
Correct.
So there is nothing stopping. Who is the marketing? And it's all based about marketing, right? If you have host a MCP server, someone is using, consuming, it's all how it reachable, right? So you
Yes.
and me are posting.
Exactly. But the best practice is if you have like a company and you're using the one API, rather than having 100 people make their own MCP servers to connect to that one API, you should just have one MCP server that everyone's connecting to. And that should be the best practice. Yeah.
Got it. But I'm just trying to understand. Like it's like app. Anyone can build the similar app. So it's one of the app will be getting more traction. Similarly, you can create MCP servers, but trusted MCP server is what people will use.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Awesome. No, I think this was a great class today and hope everyone get a little bit more out of it. As you can see, this is more intermediate class. Not having the from there, but yeah,
And
for
are
sure.
you going to share the presentation that you are steps by steps?
And if you guys are keeners, you can definitely try to do the Ziplo second part presentation and see if you're able to get it working. So I'll share that with you guys right now, and then once we're done talking, the recording has to save, and then Manoj will get that out.
Yeah, it will take an hour or so for the recording to be ready. I will see if I can get it done now, or maybe in the evening. I'll try to get it done. Yeah, I think Luis, if you can share the presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have the presentation so that we can just follow.
Yeah, we'll have the presentations.
Okay, awesome.
Thank
All right,
you,
everyone, have a
Luis.
great Saturday and enjoy your day, and don't think about MCP servers too much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Luis.
Thank you.
Great one today.
As well. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.